Chapter 16. Josiah. Their relationship had developed on camera as much as it had off camera, and it became hard to deny his growing feelings for Ray as time went on. Ray did things Quentin never did, like cooking and cleaning for him, responding to his desires, checking on his mood. Most nights out of the week, they ate together. They sat across from each other, eating a meal they had both equally decided on, or a meal Josiah requested. Ray had managed to make dating during quarantine something exciting. Thrilling even, and Josiah was convinced they had connected on a deeper level because of being stuck together, not in spite of it. When the television interview finally rolled around, 2 weeks after they had done their first live breakfast show, Josiah was a bundle of nerves all over again. The breakfast shows had become a regular thing, with Ray making breakfast and Josiah answering various questions, from relationship questions to questions about the pandemic, questions about easing the sting of lockdown, and so many questions about home workouts. Cases were steadily on the decline, as were deaths, but the economy would take longer to recover. The new UBI system was rocky, but improving as they rolled out weekly income for those most in need of the assistance. Many businesses and organizations had pulled together in the past month. Community pride had swelled, and those more privileged were doing their best to help those in lesser privileged positions. Josiah and Ray had set up their own small relief giveaway on Josiah's channel. It compared nothing to the new government system, but it had still provided peace of mind to a handful of their followers during their time of need. Hours before the interview, Josiah buzzed around his bedroom, dressing himself, peeking into the mirror, and then stripping out of his outfit in favor of a new one. He was torn between slacks or jeans, a button-down or a polo shirt, accessories or naked. Ray, on the other hand, had donned the only thing he had that fit him correctly, the suit he wore the night before the lockdown. It was truly a nice suit. Ray looked delicious in it, and it fit him like a glove. Ray left the top buttons unfastened, showing a peak of his chest, and drew his hair into a low bun. After a few adjustments in the mirror, he surrendered the room to Josiah, sweeping his lips across the other man's temple. "I'll get the computer and camera set up." "Thanks," Josiah sighed, breath hitching at Ray's touch. He had grown entirely too accustomed to having the man's arms roped around him at night, to waking up with Ray's cock pressing into his back, to Ray's warm breath tickling his neck. Ray never begged him for anything. He didn't demand attention, and he didn't even mention his needs. It was the opposite of Quentin, and Josiah found himself craving those little hints of affection and desire. He wanted to drown in Ray's hungry gaze, and he enjoyed those moments where he caught the other man staring. He enjoyed being the sole object of Ray's desires. After changing outfits one more time, he settled for a business casual look. He had on slacks, but with a t-shirt and a casual blazer. Where Ray was much more formally dressed, Josiah was the stylish breath of fresh air next to him, though their relationship was the opposite in a lot of ways. Ray was the breath of fresh air, but only because Josiah had never truly enjoyed stability. The businessman was the epitome of it, though, with his superior organization skills and his caregiving nature. Maybe he had fucked every consenting adult from Austin, Texas to Las Vegas, Nevada, but he hadn't made breakfast for every single one of them, and they hadn't gotten his heart. And while Josiah still had trouble admitting it to himself, he knew he had Ray's heart. With 10 minutes before the start of the interview, Josiah checked himself in the reflection of the camera lens, adjusted the artificial lighting, and sat back next to Ray. "I'm nervous." "Don't be. You have nothing to be nervous about." "Okay," Josiah exhaled. "Okay, I'm ready." Josiah turned on the camera and waited, drumming his fingers on his thighs until they received the incoming call and answered it. The person on the screen was the boxy-smiled local Austin City news reporter, and her face lit up when her gaze landed on Josiah and Ray. "Hey guys. My goodness, it's so good to see you." "Hey." Josiah waved. "I'm not going to lie. I am a bit nervous about this." "Oh, don't be. You are a natural in front of the camera, and everyone loves you." "Thanks." Josiah lifted his lips in a slight smirk before glancing at Ray. Also, you guys make an adorable power couple. Thanks, Ray replied this time, petting a hand down Josiah's spine, calming him. So, this isn't going to be anything major. We have a few questions about how you guys met, of course, and how it has been in a new relationship during a pandemic, and any tips for our viewers who are in budding relationships. Sound good? Yes, Josiah squeaked. They were playing for keeps now. He regarded Ray again, before the broadcaster launched into her introduction speech. It was as fluid as Josiah's was, except hers lacked the flavor and personality of his. Hers was generic, clean-accented, and palatable for everyone, but it was supposed to be. She announced Josiah and Ray, and explained a bit of their background to a silent audience. Then her attention was back on them. Hey guys. It's so good to have you here. I know your schedule must be really busy, especially with the relief giveaway and your regular schedules. Yeah. You'd think because of the pandemic, business would slow, but I've found that because people are home more, they want to consume more media, and they want more connection, so it's made my schedule infinitely busier. His body hummed with nervous energy, and Ray slid his hand down Josiah's back again, drawing small circles between the wings of his shoulder blades. Sounds about right. It's been a lot of choreographing and adjusting with all of my employees currently working from home, Ray said. What you guys have done is truly impressive, but what's more impressive is how you two found each other and have grown together throughout this quarantine. It's kind of been a whirlwind relationship, hasn't it? Josiah melted under Ray's touch and replayed Ray's soothing words in his mind. The reporter's question lingered between them for a moment before he straightened up and plastered a light smile on his face. It really has. I didn't expect, well, any of this. As I'm sure the world knows, I just came out of a really long, tumultuous relationship, and it hasn't been easy. I've actually known Ray for years. We've been in different social circles, but he has always been around. I think when you know something is right, whatever it is, be it a relationship or a business venture, you do not have to take a conventional approach. It's been a whirlwind, but the pace has felt natural to us, or at least it has felt natural to me. Ray smiled, leaning into Josiah. Ah, the interviewer sighed. We've heard the lockdown has been a major struggle for some people. It's a combination of being stuck in a small space with a loved one on top of the stress of the unknown. Do you guys have any advice about it? Josiah inched closer to Ray until his shoulder bumped the other man's chest, and his body heat spread over Josiah just like it did when they were in bed together. I honestly don't. I am definitely not a relationship counselor, and we all have our childhood traumas to work out, especially with being confined with another person. If I had to say what's worked for us, well, we have our own spaces within our space. For example, the bedroom has become my workspace, while Ray usually works in the kitchen. We do eat meals together and have designated date nights, but we're not always under each other, and we're definitely not doing every single thing together. Josiah glanced at Ray. What do you think? Therapy, Ray replied, shrugging his shoulders. I think everyone, even the most well-adjusted person, needs to go to therapy. If you carry your childhood baggage into your next relationship, it makes it hard to truly connect with the other person, and you ultimately want to be able to give the best parts of yourself to your partner. Ray paused for a moment. It isn't to say you have to be done and through therapy, but you should start with therapy at least. The reporter smiled. Good advice. Ray lifted his chin. Oh, I want to add one more thing, sorry. He blushed a little, and Josiah smiled. It was charming. Wanted to say therapy can be expensive, but doesn't have to be. Therapy is all about talking to someone who's not your partner or loved one, so you can focus on yourself and learn how to be supportive. He rubbed Josiah's back. The reporter started speaking again, but Josiah wasn't listening. He mulled over Ray's words. Ever since Ray mentioned it, Josiah had looked into therapy. He had started with a text-based therapy method, and had finally clicked enough with a virtual therapist and made the jump to weekly calls. He hadn't mentioned it to Ray, But even the first few sessions had lifted his mood and helped him shake off the cloud of depression surrounding him. His therapy had helped their relationship. It allowed him to be open with himself, his grieving process, and his wants and needs. He knew a lot of his needs stemmed from the spotty way his family provided affection and emotional support. He had grown so accustomed to not having his needs met that Ray's accommodations were overwhelming to him, but he was adjusting. The conversation between Ray and the reporter shifted from relationships to tips and tricks for staying sane during the pandemic. Ray talked about his workout routines and his habits. He spoke on adjustments, but he didn't put a rich, privileged person's flair on it, and he acknowledged all the struggles of the everyday man. He recognized the monetary struggles, the daily struggles, and he even touched on the higher rates of domestic violence and abuse. Those numbers hit home, and for a moment, Josiah considered if he had been quarantined with Quentin. He couldn't imagine being stuck in an incessant loop of shaming, begging, and gaslighting, and worse, he couldn't imagine dealing with those things and normalizing it like he had. He hadn't truly known how different a relationship could be until Ray, and Ray, despite his hookups and his playboy reputation, was an amazing partner, fake or not. The interview ended with Ray taking over the bulk of the rest of the questions. Josiah knew he gave a few answers, but he couldn't remember the answers or the questions. When the interview was over, Ray leaned forward, turning off the camera before he regarded Josiah. "You okay?" "What?" "You were really quiet towards the end of the interview, and you usually love being on camera." "I know. I was just thinking." "About?" Ray rubbed his shoulders. "About us. Is it real? I need to know. Is it real, or are we pretending?" Josiah turned moist eyes to Ray. The emotion had sprung upon him, and he felt tears collecting at the corners of his eyes. He needed an answer, but he was afraid of it at the same time, and time dragged as Ray turned his attention from the computer to Josiah. Ray studied him, coal black eyes finding their way to his face and meeting his gaze with a stony expression. "Serious?" He wet his lips. "For me it's real, yeah." "Okay," Josiah sighed. His heart raced and his breathing was shallow. He slithered out of his seat, bracing himself with a hand on the counter as he regarded Ray again. After sucking his bottom lip into his mouth, he released it with a gentle pop. "I want you." "You have me." Ray smiled. "No. Not yet, I don't," Josiah whispered. "I want you to be my first."